You know that feeling when you're so bone-tired you can barely stand, but life decides it's time to throw a curveball? That was me, just off a brutal 12-hour night shift as an EMT, pulling my city-issued ambulance into my driveway in quiet little Willow Creek, a suburban slice of nowhere in Ohio. I leaned against the hood, the cool metal grounding me, thinking I'd steal a few minutes of peace before crashing until I saw her headlights cutting through the dawn, a silver SUV prowling like it owned the street. That's when I knew my day was about to go sideways. Her name was Linda Harper, the HOA's self-crowned dictator, the kind of woman who'd measure your lawn with a ruler and fine you for an extra blade of grass. She screeched to a stop, window already down, her voice slicing through the morning calm like a chainsaw. "Jake, you can't park that thing," he writes, "a residential street, not a hospital lot." I rubbed my eyes, too exhausted for her nonsense, and shot back with a tired grin. "Linda, it's not just a truck, it's an emergency vehicle, city property, fully exempt." That only lit her fuse. She was already on her phone, muttering about tow trucks and covenant violations, her favorite weapon. I figured she was bluffing. Who calls a tow on an ambulance? But 20 minutes later, as I was pouring coffee inside, I heard the clank of chains outside my window. Sure enough, there was Linda, waving her arms like a traffic cop, directing some poor tow driver who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. He was hooking up to my rig, glancing nervously at the red and white beast like it might bite him. "Hook it up," Linda barked, clutching a stack of HOA papers that probably meant nothing. I stepped out, coffee still in hand, and leaned against the porch railing. "Buddy," I said to the driver, keeping my voice low but sharp, "you touch that ambulance, you're committing a felony, city property, not some junker." He froze, chain dangling, caught between Linda's wrath and the law. She didn't flinch, though her face was red, veins popping, screaming about property values and how my rig made the street look like a war zone. Neighbors started poking their heads out, phones up, filming what was shaping up to be the morning's entertainment. Then it happened right in the middle of her tirade. Midpoint, mid-screech about curb appeal, Linda gasped, clutched her chest, and crumpled to the pavement like a marionette with cut strings. The crowd went dead silent, the only sound her nails scraping the asphalt. Every eye turned to me, the EMT, the guy she'd been harassing for months. My heart wasn't racing from panic, it was the irony. Of course she'd collapse in front of my ambulance, the one she wanted gone. For a split second, I could have let her stew in her own arrogance, but training kicked in. I knelt beside her, checking her pulse racing, erratic, but there. "Call 911. I snapped at the gawkers, and no, I don't carry a hospital in my pocket. Someone mumbled, "But your ambulance." "Yeah, except off-duty rigs aren't stock defibrillator locked, meds secured, no partner. Just me, my hands, and a crowd more interested in TikTok than helping." I started chest compressions, counting the rhythm, sweat beating despite the chill, hyper-aware that this was the same woman who'd just tried to tow my livelihood. By the time the real paramedics rolled up, lights flashing, I was dripping, not from the work I'd done CPR for hours, but from the weight of it all. They took over, sliding an oxygen mask over her face, pushing meds I couldn't. As they loaded her onto a gurney, one asked, "Who found her?" I raised my hand, gave the quick rundown, and stepped back. Linda wasn't dead, but she wasn't out of danger either. The ambulance peeled away, leaving a heavy silence and a crowd whispering gossip like it was their job. I thought that'd be the end of it, Linda in the hospital, maybe a wake-up call to chill out. Nope. An hour later, my doorbell rang. 2 HOA board guys stood there, cheap suits and fake concern, like they'd rehearsed their lines. The tall one, reeking of cologne, cleared his throat. "Jake, we hope Linda's okay, but we need to talk about the ambulance." I almost laughed. "She nearly died in front of it, and you're worried about curb appeal?" The shorter one, clutching a folder like it was a shield, stammered, "It's about property values. People don't want to see emergency vehicles all the time." My patience, already thin, snapped. You're telling me a rig that saves lives is worse than her power trip? Write your violation letter. I'll frame it when the city laughs it off. They slunk away, muttering about meetings, but I knew this was just round one. Linda came back a week later, not humbled, not grateful, but doubled down, her SUV sporting a bumper sticker that read HOA Pride in bold letters. I chuckled, shaking my head, stared death in the face, and still cared more about her clipboard than her heart. She didn't come alone either. She had a posse of board members trailing her like nervous interns, carrying stacks of violation notices. My mailbox filled up fast. One called my ambulance unregistered equipment. Another claimed the light bar was visual pollution. The best? A citation for unruly conduct, signed by Linda herself, like she'd invented her own legal system from her hospital bed. The neighborhood was starting to crack. Neighbors I barely knew stopped me at the store, whispering their own Linda horror story as a fine for a mailbox that was too shiny, a warning for leaving a bike out overnight. She's been running this place like a dictator forever, one guy muttered, glancing over his shoulder like she might pop out of the cereal aisle. Then Linda upped the ante. I came home one evening to find an orange sticker slapped on my ambulance windshield. Toast scheduled HOA order. I laughed so hard my stomach hurt. She'd actually hired a private towing company on retainer, set to show up in 48 hours. I didn't panic. I called my buddy Tom, a municipal lawyer who lived for cases like this. When I told him, he whistled low. She's picking a fight she can't win, Jake. That rig's exempt from HOA nonsense. Let her try. You could sue her for harassment by the time this is over. His advice? Let her dig her own grave. So I waited, snapping photos of every notice, every sticker, building my case like a detective. Monday morning, the tow truck rolled in, 2 guys this time, looking like they meant business. Linda was there, practically dancing, barking orders like she was directing a movie. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, phone recording. When the drivers hesitated, I strolled over, calm as you please. Fellas, that's city property registered emergency vehicle, fully exempt. Want to see the papers? They glanced at each other, then at Linda, who was waving her clipboard like it was a magic wand. Tow it, she shrieked. Rules are rules. One driver shook his head. Ma'am, we can't touch this, we'd be liable. Her face turned purple, veins bulging, and for a second, I worried she'd drop again. You think you're clever, Jake? She hissed, stepping way too close. I tilted my head, smirking. Careful, Linda, last time you got this worked up, it didn't end well. The crowd gasped, a few neighbors snickered, and she stormed off, slamming her door so hard it echoed. That was the turning point. The neighborhood lit up, group chats buzzing, stories spreading. People who'd cowered under Linda's fines started pushing back. One family parked their RV in their driveway, bold as brass. Another put up Christmas lights in September, a big middle finger to her rules. Even old Mr. Thompson, fined years ago for a bird feeder, set up 3 new ones, grinning like a kid. Linda tried everything: anonymous hate notes in my mailbox, fake city stickers, complaints to zoning boards. Nothing stuck. A city inspector even laughed, telling me, she's wasting her own HOA's money, keep us posted. Then she went nuclear, an injunction to declare my ambulance a zoning violation. I got the papers, thick with nonsense about visual blight and lowering property values. My lawyer, Tom, was thrilled. This is a joke. Jakesh handed us a slam dunk. At the hearing, Linda strutted in like she owned the courtroom, pearls gleaming, flanked by her nervous board minions. I walked in with Tom and a binder so thick it thudded on the table. She ranted about neighborhood values, pointing at me like I was public enemy number 1. The judge, barely hiding his annoyance, cut her off. Mrs. Harper, this is frivolous, borderline malicious. He tossed her petition, warned her about penalties, and left the door open for my countersuit. The fallout was instant. Neighbors who'd stayed quiet started talking. A petition to oust Linda as HOA president spread like wildfire. Half the block signed in days. Even Mr. Thompson, his hand shaking with glee. At the special meeting, the room was packed, tension thick as fog. Linda sat up front, gavel in hand, trying to look regal, but her eyes betrayed her panic. When the vote came, it wasn't close. She was out, crushed by a landslide. The new president, a sweet woman who'd once been fined for excessive gnomes, promised fairness, and the room erupted in cheers. Linda stormed out, muttering about lawsuits, but no one cared. That night, the neighborhood felt alive. Kids shooting hoops, laughter on porches, no fear of citations. My ambulance sat there, no longer a target but a badge of victory. I sat on my porch, coffee in hand, binder tucked away, knowing I hadn't just saved Linda's life that day, I'd helped free a community. She might come back swinging, because people like her don't quit, but she'll never hold that kind of power again. Her heart attack didn't humble her, but her own obsession did her in. So what do you think? Ever dealt with someone like Linda, so drunk on control they'd rather burn everything down than back off? Drop a comment. Share your story. I want to hear how you'd handle a neighborhood tyrant like her.